Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Season 2 premiere of The Last of Us. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I want to start this off by prefacing, obviously with Season 1, I was a lot more familiar with The Last of Us Part 1, so I could easily tell you, what are some interesting changes that they made from the game to the TV show. I am not well versed in Part 2 like I am Part 1. I don't even know the full story of Part 2. There's some later bits I think I know just because I've seen bits and pieces, but I know maybe half the game, but that doesn't necessarily fully mean anything simply because, and this kind of might be a spoiler, but there are flashbacks involved in Part 2 that kind of play into that 5-year time gap. I don't know how much of the 5-year time gap the flashbacks cover, but I do know there are flashbacks for very specific reasons. And so that was also a big thing too. People had questions like, how are they going to structure this season in comparison to the game? How will the story events play out? So I don't think they're going to do the thing. I'm curious if they're going to do what they did in episode 7 from last season, being Left Behind, that old DLC storyline. I'm curious, are they going to have the flashbacks presented kind of doing Lost style of every episode? Some of the episodes will be present day and flashbacks, or will there be an entire episode dedicated to the flashbacks? Because there's a lot of flashback stuff to my recollection, at least what I remember the game. So I could definitely see that being spread out more. I don't see that fitting that all in one episode. Once again, the game is maybe 2 times longer than Part 2 is 2 times longer than Part 1, if I remember correctly. But anyway, my whole point was some of this stuff I can compare and contrast, but a lot of it will be, so it's going to be a pseudo play, blind walk, watch, because I'll know some stuff, but there's going to be other stuff I'm going to be guessing along with other people who've never played the game or know nothing about the game. So, obviously, Season 1, I'll try to avoid spoilers, but if I know any comparisons with the game, I'll comment on it, as long as it doesn't massively spoil anything in the future. So either way, what really shocked me was us starting immediately where Part 1 ended. Now, someone can correct me, because it's once again, I watched someone play Part 2. Like I said, it wasn't all of it, just some of it, and this was years ago. It probably would have been around the time the game came out, which would have been 2019. So I might have forgotten a lot of details. I don't remember it starting like that. I was like, we're immediately picking up with that powerful conversation of, promise me you're telling me the truth. And he's like, I am. And she's like, okay. And then she moves on. And I was like, are we going to stay in this time frame longer or something? Because I knew the 5-year time skip happens, but I was like, are we going to stay here for a bit? But no, we eventually get there. I was not expecting us shifting over to Abby. I was like, oh, we're doing it like that, because that's not your introduction to Abby at all. You don't have a proper introduction to Abby. I mean, even this technically isn't our proper introduction, but we know her name and who she is. But it's that's not how that character is presented to you initially. And like I said, it's not even really a spoiler. Kind of where episode 1 ends is where you start, with an introduction to that character in the game. So that was really interesting, because I know aspects about Abby just because I was watching something and someone spoiled it, because Season 1 had just ended and they were talking a little bit about Part 2. And like I said, I don't know the entire story of Part 2. And so an element of who Abby is kind of got spoiled for me. And they touch on it in this episode, but like I said, I'm not going to go into details and stuff. But well, I'll have to wait to see if that thing, because I clearly remember what the person had said. Once again, it's not their fault. It is what it is. The game had been out for years. I didn't know the story. That's just on me. You just kind of have to accept it as it is, because I've managed to not have the game spoiled for me, except for little bits here and there that I've stumbled across on my own. But anyway, once again, I'm sorry for the large diatribe and stuff at the beginning here, but yeah, we get introduced to Abby and we find out, oh, they're connected to the people Joel killed. It's wiped out all the Fireflies. It's well, could we go out there and find more Fireflies? It's no, these were the Fireflies. And they're suggesting we can go to Seattle and potentially meet up with another bunch. Some interesting things One of the people in that group is the actress who plays Gert in Marvel's Runaways, which is interesting because who was also in Runaway, Renzi Feliz, who played Victor in The Penguin. So just kind of funny how that connects. And also one of the people there is Tati Gabrielle, which I was like, interesting. Because I know the show does sprinkle in people who've been in the Last of Us games. Like they're sprinkled in there, playing different roles than obviously what they play. Or some people are playing the roles they played in the game. Other people are. But either way, I don't know if she was in the Last of Us Part 2 or not. But she is potentially I think she's the lead main protagonist of Naughty Dog's newest game, that intergalactic game they presented at like the Game Awards. Because like nothing's really known about the game, but she plays the main protagonist in that. I was like, interesting, which makes me wonder like what happened first. Did like her getting cast in this happen first, or her in the new Naughty Dog game? I could definitely see that be like a 1-2 punch of maybe they liked her so much in this that she also auditioned, and they like working with the people they have experience with. I don't know. And maybe it happened vice versa. Maybe she got the job with the game first, and then they were like, oh, since we're filming season 2, we'd love to kind of implement you in that. Once again, if she's not already in the Last of Us Part 2 video game and I just not remembering. But yeah, they don't know much about Joel. They're just like, we know a little bit. Joe, we don't even know, but she's like 50 years old, scar above his head. Like, yeah, Abby's like, I'm gonna get my revenge, because it's a conversation about like Ellie too. They're like, yeah, because it doesn't matter. There's no way that's true. Because, like I said, and someone can correct me on this, and I talked about this during the season 1 finale. My understanding is you can find some recordings that basically the doctors did to Ellie. Ellie isn't the only immune person they found. There were other kids as well, or other people as well, but it never worked out. So them trying to do what they did with Ellie, there was no guarantee it was going to work. Now that might be something that they explore more in this one, or it might just be a thing of no, they completely changed it. So like Ellie is like the golden child, but there was still no guarantee it would have worked. But like she was 1 in a million, and whereas like at least there was at least maybe a dozen others. Like I said, the season 1 never covered this. But that's why I'm like, and I think I said at the time, I could be misremembering. So depending on whether they kept that the same, or if, like I said, I'm completely wrong, that changes a lot of, perspective on that whole situation. But either way, Abby wants to go after Joel. And I was like, and when we find him, I'm going to kill him, and I'm going to kill him slow, So it's like, yeah, it is kind of that. I mean, that's a lot of like part 2 is about the whole conversations about revenge, about, it's like you kind of do a lot of stuff for survival, and it is always a thing of there are consequences for your actions. You never really, because these are our main protagonists, you never quite see like the other side of who gets affected by, because you were controlling Joel and Ellie, and it's like this is their journey, their story. But what about everyone else's story? They just seem side characters in someone else's story, but they have lives of their own. They have agency of their own. So yeah, it's interesting. It's just, yeah, it's just kind of a nice way of kind of like, making you realize like, yeah, some of what you did in 1 had way more of an impact than you really kind of thought at the time. So, but yeah, like I said, just kind of like making that kind of clear on Abby and her group, and like they just aren't, because that's, once again, they're coming after Joel specifically, having a vendetta against him. That's hidden. So for them to be like, no, we're not going to hide who this group is. We're making it clear from the beginning. No, they're after Joel for what he did. And kind of like not directly saying it, but I mean, all the clues are there to be like, yo, it's because of what happened in the season 1 finale at the all those fireflies getting murked, including Marlene. So yeah, but yeah, we kick to the 5 years later, and Ellie's training. Obviously, I remembered Ellie having a tattoo, and they never really go into it, but some of the stuff later on makes me go like, oh, because it is covering the bite mark. So I guess it's like to make it like at least less visible, she got a tattoo to kind of like cover it up. I mean, there might be even more significance to the tattoo that I'm just not remembering. I might not even have that knowledge to begin with, but it does seem like it also helps, like having a massive tattoo cover up your entire arm. Because if you have it in one specific spot, you draw a lot more attention to it. But if it's something like borderline almost like covering your entire forearm like that, then people won't notice too much of like, oh, it's just kind of like maybe a burn or something. Because like the wound does look, it doesn't look like it's just like from the bite. It does look like she probably like burned it a little bit just to cover it up, because later on she does a similar thing where she cuts a wound just so it doesn't like leave a scar in the form of teeth marks. So yeah, either way, Ellie is doing some training and against a big dude, doing her thing, and it's just like, yeah, kind of got so into it, I didn't hear you tell me stop, but finds out from Jesse, like, yeah, that guy was holding back. She's like, what? It's like, yeah, if he hit you full force, he probably would have knocked you out before. It's like, don't hold punches. I mean, understandable. Like, nothing in this life is going to hold punches, so you need to learn to be able to take that stuff. But it's also because Joel put in the word, they're like, yeah, don't put her through the ringer too much, which Ellie doesn't appreciate. As we see throughout this episode, that their relationship has deteriorated. And I think it's so interesting. Like, we don't know what happened. And even Joel's like, I have no idea why she'd be mad at me. He even says, like, I'm a good guy. Like, what reason would she have to be mad at me? And I'm like, that's so interesting. Like, because in Joel's mind, because the ending keeps it ambiguous, but if you look at Ellie's face, you can tell she does not fully believe Joel with what he said. Now the question is, did Ellie find something out? Is she still just guessing that Joel like lied to her? Which obviously is kind of an interesting theme about Joel lying. We'll get to that later, but because the thing is, Joel, in his mind, he can never guess or think that Ellie might know. Because for him, it's like, who would tell her? The only two people that walked out of that hospital is him and Ellie. Everyone else is dead. So it's easy to keep a secret when everyone else that would have that secret is dead. So, I mean, obviously there's other people connected to it because Abby and her group tried to save survivors, but that was all for naught. Instead of chasing after Joel and Ellie, it's like, well, they're trying to save survivors, but it's like, well, what's the point? It didn't matter in the end because everyone still died, and now they are like, Joel and Ellie had a 3-day start on them, and it's like, we have no way knowing where they're going, especially because they went in the only working vehicle we had. So it's interesting too because like Ellie and Joel are on the rocks, but then you have Dina and Joel, which I didn't remember Dina and Joel having such a good relationship. Like, legitimately, I don't remember any interactions they had at all in the game. Once again, it might have been there, and I don't remember that at all. Obviously, played by Isabella Merced. Like, man, she's been having quite a past couple years. Obviously, like, going to be coming up in Superman as Hulk Girl. So, either way, just interesting. But yeah, like the moment I saw her name and saw she was part of the cast, I was like, is she playing Dina? It's like, sure as hell is. I was like, oh, that's dope. But yeah, her and Joel are talking because she's like, oh, like, how do you fix that thing? And, Joel being like the construction guy that he is, he's like explaining stuff to her. And I love that, like, Dina's asking, like, what's going on between you and Ellie? He's like, I have no idea. I don't know why she's mad at me. I was like, is she mad at me? Like, did she talk to you about it? And Dina's like, no. And he's like, how do you know? And she's like, I could just tell that there's something there. And then she was moving on like, well, how do you... He's like, hey, sometimes you just do the best that you can. He's like, I get it. She's a 19-year-old. And what 19-year-old doesn't like? He's like, well, I know I'm not like whatever I am, what I am to her. And I think this kind of plays into the season 1 finale. He says this thing where it's like, right, it's like, this is a new thing for me and Ellie. Ellie doesn't remember her biological parents. Joel never got to have that 19 years with Sarah. Sarah was like 14 when she died. So, but him to comfortably bringing that up in front of Dina, it's kind of like, well, our past is our past, and like, I don't have to kind of necessarily hide it, which is ironic for me to say that when it comes to Joel, but we'll kind of move past that for now. But the conversation being what it is, where it's just like, he never got to experience this with Sarah, so he doesn't have practice dealing with a 19-year-old who wants nothing to do with her pseudo dad. So, but once again, he's kind of hitting it off with Dina. I have to stop myself because I almost want to call her by her real name, Isabel. Either way, Joel's kind of like, well, you can't control the emotions of another person. And Dina's like, are you in therapy? And it's like, Joel being in therapy is the wildest thing ever, and he's just like, don't tell people I'm in therapy because it's still that thing of like, oh, kind of, oh, ugh, you're in therapy. It's more so the stigma of like, oh, you're in therapy, like, what are you, crazy? It's like, well, I'm sure people who know Joel well enough would be like, well, yes, man is disturbed and not well. But we'll circle back to that. Obviously, Tommy and Ellie are out dealing with infected, her doing them snipe shots. But obviously, like, because Joel is pushing, like, hey, put Ellie on fence duty. He's like, no, let me. She's like, let me go out on a run. It's like the last time you went on a run, you went off by yourself and you were very reckless. It's like, well, she has reason to be reckless because it's like, well, nothing can, infect me. Yeah, but you can still, might not be able to be infected, but you can easily still be torn apart, which is kind of ironic and interesting because that's the whole thing. Marlene was saying, like, if you save her now, she could easily still just die and be torn apart by some runners or clickers at some point down the road. But it's like, yeah, it's top secret, and she's up there like just being an asshole, being like, "Oh, I'm immune," and it's just like, "Oh, Jesus, calm down." So she kind of forces Tommy's hand. It's just like, "Let me do this," and he's just kind of reluctantly like, "All right, fine," because he just reminds her like, you are just as much, you and Joel might not be related by blood, but you are just as much like each other. And she's like, yeah, so that means this is, if that's the case, you know how this is going to win because you never win against Joel, so you're not going to win against me, so this is going to go my way. So he concedes. So you also have Joel later on playing the role of uncle around Benji, his nephew, which is super adorable. Which is, once again, ironic considering like the conversation he had with Tommy. They buried the hatchet, obviously, but yeah, that whole like him going to be a father thing, and obviously Joel was going through what he was going through at the time, but now he's in a better place and he can play the role of an uncle. But him and Maria are having this conversation about bringing more people in, and a little bit of the old Joel comes out where it's like, hey, we can't take everyone in, but he also says like, right, I get it, if I could, I'd bring everyone in, but the problem is like we just don't have enough space, and it's hard to take everyone in. He's like, I don't want to be a dick, I do want to take people in, but Maria had to remind him like, don't forget you were a refugee at one point in time and we took you in. It's like, well, you kind of had you had the growth standard of, well, you had family here, so made that a little easier, but I think the point still stands. So we also get introduced to the therapist character, Gail, played by Catherine O'Hara. Now, this is something I would not have known if other people hadn't pointed it out. I believe her character is new to the show. I don't believe definitely don't remember her from Jackson in the game. But once again, that was years ago, so I could be misremembering, but I do feel like I remember people talking about her character being new for the show. So, because maybe like the show, like maybe Craig Mazin or Neil Druckmann talked about it. Maybe that also played into it. But I think people say like, yeah, she's an original character and she's a therapist. Was not expecting her and Joel to have that connection because like she's up there drinking a little bit, which Joel's like, should you be doing that? And it's like, because she was like, one gives pills, one listens to you and tries to give you solutions. It's kind of like the different type of like, was it like a psychotherapist versus like a psychologist or something like that? Might have been what she was saying. But yeah, she was drinking a little bit because she was fed up with Joel. She says like, this is my birthday, and it's kind of, she's like, I woke up sad. And Joel's complaining about Ellie and stuff. He's like, I'm a good guy, which now now knowing what we know, it makes that hit even harder where she's just like, all right, let's cut the bullshit. We're going to sit here and basically say some hard truths. There's going to be some uncomfortable stuff that I'm going to say because you just have to say it. And once it's out there, we can do something about it. She's like, you killed my husband, Eugene. This is my first birthday without him in 41 years. So, because immediately my brain was like, oh, Eugene, I was like, wait, running through the Rolodex of, well, Joel's killed a lot of people, some people on screen, some people off screen. I was like, who could Eugene have been? But for her to say that means like, no, it had to be someone that died in the past year. It's like, well, what were those circumstances? Why would Joel do that? Because she specifically was like, no, it's not even just I dislike you. I think I hate you. Because she's like, specifically, not only because you killed him, how you did it, which you're like, what did you do, Joel? I was like, interesting. And that's also got to be interesting too, being like being a patient to the person, like, you killed her husband. Like, there's definitely more to that story, and maybe this is something we'll cover in some flashbacks, understanding that whole dichotomy and that whole relationship and dynamic. But I'm like, Jesus, like, how can you just, like, I mean, I guess you kind of moved past that. You thought you moved past that because she was just kind of being very professional and putting it all aside. But it's ironic too, because Joel is the type to bury stuff, so she buried it just to be professional. But I mean, that's kind of a conflict of interest. But you kind of don't have any other choice. It's kind of the only trained therapist there at in Jackson. So, but yeah, she put it out there about, like, yeah, I hate you. She's like, now I'm ashamed about that. Now that it's out there, we can work to figure that out. So tell me what it is, Joel. I can tell you're lying. You're hiding something. So tell me what it is. And it's just like, once it's out there, I can actually help you, and we could work on this together. And Joel is almost willing to open up, but then he stops himself. Because it's like, because she was like, did you hurt her? And it's like, no. What did you do to her? And then Joel's like, and he stops himself and he stands up, and a teardrop falling from his eye. I saved her. I was like, oh God. Because obviously there's so much weight to that, because Joel does carry guilt. Because I kept thinking like he was going to say, like, I lied to her. It's like, not only did you lie to her, you did a lot of terrible stuff. Once again, you killed a lot of people in her name because you went against what she wanted. It was because at the end you made a selfish choice. You chose what you wanted versus what she clearly wants. She told you what she wanted before you even ended up in that situation. It's kind of a wrong on both sides, but Joel, like, is trying to justify it. Once again, even going as far as like, yeah, I'm the good guy. It's like, you know, you did a terrible thing. And you know, if Ellie knew, she'd never forgive you for what you did, especially because you've kept it to yourself for 5 years. But once again, Ellie kind of knew you were lying. She could kind of read it because she's been around you to know that you were lying, but she never said anything. So that's why Joel's probably thinking, I'm overreacting. I'm thinking too much about it. He might clearly think like, Ellie has no idea. How would she? She was unconscious the whole time. So... But yeah, and just kind of walks out the room afterwards. It's like, oh, because him and Ellie, like, she's staying in the garage, and he knows something's up, but he just doesn't know why she's pissed at him. So I think that's also why Ellie makes such a point to, I want to go out on the runs, because she does not want to be in town. Because she, like, her and Joel are barely acknowledging each other. She's staying in her own lane. He's staying in his because he took Gail's advice and he tried to back off, but it didn't work. They haven't talked at all. They don't have dinner together. So Ellie's just trying to, like, especially when everyone around her, whether it's Tommy, whether it's Jesse, that, like, so much is happening in town because Joel is putting in word to be like, yo, like, you know, because he wants to keep her safe. But for Ellie, it's just like that. Just, that's the thing when you get very overprotective. All you do is push your child to be even more rebellious, you know. So, but Ellie ends up going with Dina and some others to kind of go check out, you know, just simple recon. We learn about Dina and Jesse and their on and off relationship. Dina knows that Ellie's gay and is like, oh yeah, like you and because she's the only other one. And then Ellie's like, what are you talking about? Kind of like she's the only other gay lady in town. But it also seems like Ellie and her, what was her name? I can't remember, the one who was leading the recon team. Apparently they have history. Like it was kind of like a something that didn't work out situation. So, but then Dina's like, oh, you like someone else, don't you? And you can tell, like, especially how Ellie felt about the whole Jesse conversation. Like you could tell, like, how she was looking. It's like, to be fair, it's like, obviously Ellie's got a very complicated relationship with her sexuality. Well, not even just her sexuality in general, because I think she's probably resolved a lot of that and kind of just dealt with it as is. But it's like, you know, it's like, first time she opened up to somebody like that was her best friend Riley, and we saw how that storyline played out. Now here's your other new best BFF, and it's like, well, you're hoping that storyline, that's history doesn't repeat in that regard. But nevertheless, they are very in their own lane of, like, Ellie's very stubborn, and she always has been and continues to be, probably even more stubborn now that she's older, because she's like, yeah, I'm an adult, I can make my own decisions. She ends up rushing ahead, and obviously Dina's willing to follow suit because Dina can be very stubborn too and kind of takes is willing to follow like Ellie down the path of stubbornness. They went to go investigate some infected because they ended up tearing a bear apart, which is like poor bastard. Um, but there was like one or two that were inside. We never saw the other one dealt with, and I guess that's the one Ellie runs into later because Dina was like, okay, there was two, so she saw the one clicker, which is the one Ellie dealt with. Not less like she dealt with the other one, but they made a point just to show Ellie. So I think there was just the one clicker, and then that other thing she deals with later. But I don't think they utilized that at all in the first season. The whole bottom thing. If you've never played any of the Last of Us games, that's how you do like distract like runners and well people and even the clickers. Is you would throw a bottle or a brick. That'd be your noisemaker to draw them over somewhere so you can kill them. Which I even love how Ellie stealth killed because I was like, I don't think that's how Ellie looks when she stealth kills in 2 because obviously she's taller. Obviously Bella is raw. I mean, yes, is a little older in between season 1 and season 2 because they did film that during a pandemic. So Bella's only like 2 or 3 years older. But they are roughly around the same size. I don't know if they've grown too much between because they were like maybe 19 when they were originally cast, maybe a little bit younger. Might have been 19 when I think they were 19 when the season 1 came out, so they were like probably like 17 or 18 when they filmed it. But either way, my point is when Ellie is doing the kill, I was like, isn't that how Ellie, if I remember correctly, that's her stealth kills in the first game, is her hopping on you, stab, 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 stab in the neck and stuff. I think that's specifically like the animation for her stealth kills in the first game, if I remember correctly, but I could be mistaken. Like I said, it's just like Bella isn't as tall as Ellie is post time skip. So I think that was them almost kind of keeping that compensation of like, well, keeping it a little realistic, I guess, because of Ellie's size being what it is, you still would need to do that, especially for the clicker. So, but yeah, they end up getting separated when Ellie falls through the floor, and she comes across something that I was like, because this is a big question I had prior to The Last of Us Part 2 coming out, was I was like, ooh, what are the infected going to be like? And even I don't know the question to that. I think most of the infected I remember were just the same ones. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if this is a change that happened in that they're making for the TV show with this new breed, or if that is something from the game as well, but it's maybe later than I got in the story because I don't remember that at all. Where we introduce like smarter infected, which I think is interesting. I mean, obviously we get a bloater after 20 or so years of infection. Granted, bloaters were periodically throughout the first game. I'm assuming they're in the second game as well. But like the fact is, so far in the show, we've only come across one, and that was in episode 5. So, but yeah, things are changing because same thing happened in The Walking Dead where like the dead started to evolve. The infection started mutating again and changing. And this is an infected that it's not even a clicker, it's a runner, but it has more thought. It because she's like, run at me, and it ran in the opposite direction. It hid, it waited to strike. Even that creepy thing where like the mycelium or like of the fungus is like coming out its nose and twisting and twirling. But yeah, it ends up biting Ellie, and you even see like there's a little bit of the mycelium like there on her wound. But it's like, I guess that won't mean anything necessarily. But yeah, she covers it up, pretends like everything's okay. But when she gets back, she carves the wound just to, because I was like, oh, you once again hide that it was a bite mark. And then she kind of sews it up. So like that way it looks like, hey, it's a wound from something else. Like, oh, she got cut or stabbed or something. And then I sew up the wound so you don't realize it was a bite mark. But yeah, they present this to the council. And now the question is, well, what does that mean? Is this a one-off? Could it be more? There was a whole bunch of other infected who killed that bear, so could it have been 6? Is that a horde? It's like, yes, but Maria's like, yeah, I've been feeling a little something. But then the guy's like, a feeling? And Maria looked at him like, the fuck you? Yes, I had a feeling. But the other person on the council was like, I forgot the exact wording she was saying, but basically she's like, basically reality is a culmination of hunches or something. I'm butchering it, but she's kind of saying like, right, hunches do matter in the grand scheme of things. So already kind of giving some winks and nods to like the evolution of what the infected situation is now, like, and these changes are new discovery for them. Like I said, I don't know the game, so like I don't know if this was like something that's just introduced past where I'm familiar with the game. Maybe it came up in the parts of the game and it's been so long I don't remember, or maybe this is something they made changes for the show. I don't know. You have Joel coming trying to talk to Ellie, and she kind of did not want to talk to him. Um, and he offers to put new strings on the guitars, and it's just like they haven't even said like 10 words to each other and that in just that span of time. So it's just kind of like she didn't know what to say to him. He immediately is like, hey, let me do this for you. Because I think in his mind was like, if I do this for her, maybe it'll be an olive branch. Because she's like, oh, do you play? She's like, yeah, enough. And he's just like, let me replace the strings for you. I'll bring it back as soon as possible. So Ellie ends up going to the New Year's celebration, and that sequence is obviously straight out of the game. Her and Dina dancing. I do feel like I remember Jesse being more of a tool than he is in the show. I don't remember. He might have been more of a good guy than I'm remembering, but I could have sworn he had beef with Ellie. I think they're not making him as much of an asshole because it's like, because she's like, oh, you and Dina will get better. He's like, no, I don't think so. And Ellie was like, why? But Dina cut that off. But I don't, like I said, someone can correct me. I do feel like, without, obviously don't go into spoilers, but I swear Jesse was more of an asshole in the game, like especially towards Ellie, because I think because of the Dina of it all, like he had issues with her, but he seems okay with her in this version. So that might be a change they made. But yeah, like I said, that entire sequence played out that way, especially then dancing and it's like, oh, how do I smell? And then wiping her like body on Ellie. And I was like, oh, that's super sweet. And it's like, oh, the guys are staring at you. And it's like, no, they're not. Ellie's like, they're staring at you. And it's like, no, they're staring at you because they're jealous. And it's like, they have nothing to be jealous of. It's like, yeah, they should be afraid of you. They should be terrorized. And then they start kissing, but one of the people there is like, yo, don't do that. This is a family function. And they're like, okay, we got it. And then he proceeded to call them dykes. And Ellie was about to pop off him until Joel stepped in. Papa Bear stepped in. But Ellie didn't appreciate that because it's like, why do you? Because obviously in the grand scheme of things, it's the antithesis of who Joel is and how he reacts when it comes to Ellie. It's like you let your temper get the best of you, and you never give me a chance. You never let me make the decision. You never let me make my choices. They have to be made for me by you, and that's why it's so suffocating and why she just has so much issues with like what's bubbling beneath the surface. Like, I didn't ask you to do that. And he's like, right. And he just walks away, and it's frustrating and it's sad to see them where they are. And he's on the porch with the guitar. She walks up to the house, sees him, and immediately heads towards the garage. You're like, damn. At the same time, the ending being that we saw earlier on that some of their sewage piping or whatever piping they have, I think it might be just the sewage line piping, has some like branches growing in it. But as we can see at the end, there's some like mycelium there. So I don't know if that's just being like, oh, there's infected inside of some of that, or is that being like the infections kind of infiltrating some of their sewage system. Don't fully know what to make of that. But then finally ending on the stinger of Abby and her crew showing up. So, yes. As I referenced earlier, the big question was, how are you going to structure this season? How are you going to, like, certain pretty big plot points? Well, like, they're going to do certain big plot points, which are like, when is the question? And I was like, some people had wondered, like, are certain big points, like, because they are splitting the story, because this season will not cover the entirety of part 2 of The Last of Us. So they were wondering where you're going to put certain story beats at. So we'll see where it all goes. We'll see how things play out next episode. I am nervous. I'll say that. If you know where the story goes, you're just like, ooh, everyone was nervous. I was nervous the entire episode because I'm like, I don't think they'd. I mean, like I said, I'm dancing around it until the thing happens. So, yeah, I'm nervous. It's going to make me queasy watching the show, I'm sure. Because, yeah, this season's going to fuck me up. It's going to fuck up a lot of people. It's going to be so interesting to see people who do not know the story experience certain things. You're like, oh, God, people are going to this season's going to fuck up a lot of people. But either way, I'm excited to have The Last of Us back, like I've reiterated over and over again. Having not fully knowing where the story is going to go, I'm excited to, for the most part, get the full story. Maybe I will, well, once again, I won't be getting a full story either way. I still haven't decided. I could have watched some cutscenes before this, but I was like, I might wait until the entire story of part 2 is done, whether that carries over into a season 3 and whatnot, but whatever the case may be. That's kind of a future problem. I'm just going to take it in as it comes with this season, so... But yeah, I've run my mouth off long enough. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.